We would like to call to order the Lake Mills City Council meeting for October 17th, 2017. Would you all stand for the flag pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ready for roll call? Mr. Fields?
Here.
Mrs. Fritsch? Here. Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Fritsch?
Here.
Ms. Schmidt? Here. Mr. Gutfeld? Okay. Item 3, corrections and/or approval of the regular and the work session of the City Council minutes of October 3rd, 2017. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please call roll on that. Mrs. Fritsch? Aye. Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0. Good. Moving us to item number 4, correspondence. Is there someone who would like to start with correspondence tonight? Did anyone have correspondence? Okay, Steve, you want to go?
I had an individual down towards Sandy Beach at Trailer Park ask about winterizing their meters, the water meters, how to go about that. So I got some information from Steve, and I'll pass that on to him. And then had somebody ask a few questions about speed limits down by Bartles Beach again, so I'll follow up with them.
Okay. Anybody on this side have correspondence?
Yes, I got a thank you from a resident who had asked me,
Your mic might be a little far.
who had asked me to look at house numbers because he had called a taxi and they couldn't find the place. And I looked at it and found out that house number should be facing the road, not private residence, not private drives. And as a consequence, we got it changed. So he got a thank you from it, which was appreciated.
Okay. Did have the anniversary of the library this past week, and people did attend that. And we do have, I think the display at the library is still up, I believe, about the,
Civil rights movement
yes,
in
thank
Milwaukee.
you, couldn't think of the word. Civil rights movement in Milwaukee. So if you haven't been to the library and seen it, you might want to go over and do that. So I did have some people ask some questions, and I don't think we mentioned this at the last meeting, but about why the water changing the lead piping was done after the roads were done, and basically explained that they're done by different parties and they don't necessarily talk to each other about what's going on because they're not done by the city itself. Do you want to add anything to that statement?
Yeah, I think I will, and Paul can help me, but the private property owner gets to make the decision on when they want to replace it, and generally that's in working in coordination with their contractors. So we've been making decisions on what roads we were going to repair 2 years ago already, and they probably made the decision on when to replace their lead lateral service 3 months ago or less. So what happens is they replace their portion, which is generally from the sidewalk into their property. We technically have to replace our portion then relatively shortly thereafter, depending on conditions. So we've taken the policy to try and do within a week. So we had Madison Street scheduled for work last year. We had the bids out in April. We accepted the bids in May. Someone who decided to do that work at that point in time, sometime in August or later, means that we didn't have any opportunity to respond, nor would we, because what happens is we'd have to stop all street maintenance work in the city of Lake Mills until all the lead lateral services have been replaced. So I guess from our point of view, it was, they're small, they'll be patched as part of the lead lateral service replacement, and it'll have to kind of fall into place as we move forward. We were kind of hoping when we originally talked about it that they do South Main Street and Mulberry, and then all the ones that we've done from 2000 to 2017. But that hasn't been the way it's worked. We've had people that are, because all those lines would have copper services already, and we wouldn't have to dig into the street. But that's not the way it's worked. It's been pretty random throughout the city, neighborhoods based kind of primarily on neighbors talking and trying to get conditions set up so that meets their needs. And so we ended up with a lot more street cuts than we had originally anticipated. If they had followed the other ones, we wouldn't have had any, because like I said, all the pre-2017 ones already have copper out from under the street. And Mulberry and South Main Street will have the copper replaced next year and the year after, so we could have waited, but
Well, life isn't perfect, and we didn't know we were going to have that problem with the lead water either, so
lead laterals.
the lead laterals causing lead in the water. We get it correct, okay.
Have you got any idea what, when the patches will be put in, or
They're starting October 30th.
is that going to be done all at once, or is it? going to-
Yes, we only mobilize once and do it all at one shot.
Okay. So we'll try to smooth down those roads for everybody. And if there, let's see, that's it for correspondence, then we will move on to questions and public comment. The public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comment may also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meeting law discourages action by the council on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes and state your name and address when starting your comments. Fill out the sign-in sheet provided on the podium. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the city manager's report. Steve.
I only provided 2 documents. One was a check register and one was the PD report. Try and follow up with. There's the annual chamber dinner. I sent that notice out to all of you when you received it.
Yeah, is the city a chamber member then?
No, we are not,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't mind having you attend because you pay.
Okay, so even though we're not chamber members, it's okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure about that.
The multi-use committee is holding a meeting Thursday night. The Rock Lake Management Plan has their public input session Thursday night, 6:30 downstairs. We're still working on issues on South Main Street. In fact, I'm meeting with Main Street Program and the Chamber Wednesday to discuss issues related to making sure that we're coordinated on parking and access to the downtown. You'll note that they've started in earnest on installing the electric on South Main Street. And along with that goes the cable TV and Frontier Telephone. The gas will probably start shortly too. We have issued the permits. There were some changes in the original design. They're now going to split that in half and have a gas main on each side of the street. So that'll make a little bit of a difference in how that's constructed. I was asked about a handicapped guardrail at the back entrance to the library. We are reviewing that. We think we know what the answer is, but we're still working on that.
Okay.
The handicapped ramp heads down the ramp to the east. So if someone's walking straight north off the end of it, that's not considered the handicapped ramp. So if we put a handrail on there, we're going to have a bunch of people then jumping over the handrail. And the grade on the handicapped ramp to the east actually doesn't require a handrail because it's a small enough grade. So, but we'll make sure our numbers are correct. The strategic planning session, still checking on that, but I listed January 31st, February 15th, and sometime in March. We still, all right. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Do you have any questions?
Do you know when they're going to put the communications tower in the back here?
No, I do not. They've been off again, on again for about a year and a half, so I'm not quite sure when that'll fall into place.
Okay.
And we'll have a couple other communication towers going in, but not for telephone service.
We do have people waiting for that.
Yeah.
Not just on the council, but it looks like we have that too. But we do have constituents that are looking for that.
I
Could you-
haven't heard anything in about 3 months. They send an email past us, and then all of a sudden they're gone.
Could you check on it?
Yep.
Okay, good. Anybody else have anything for Steve? Okay. Accepting the minutes of the Senior Advisory Board for September 14th, 2017 will be placed on file. Item 8, council business, miscellaneous licenses. Our first thing is weights and measures for Lake Mills Hometown Pharmacy. Can you read a little bit of that license?
It's just the application for weights and measures for Lake Mills Hometown Pharmacy. They're a new pharmacy in Lake Mills, so that's why it's coming for you now instead of when the group came together back in June.
Okay, but we do need a motion to accept, right? Okay. Someone like to make a motion to issue the application for weights and measures license to Lake Mills Hometown Pharmacy?
I'll move the application for approval for Lake Mills Hometown Pharmacy. And weights
Second.
and measures license.
Oh.
And we have a
Second.
second over here. So, any other discussion about that? Not that there's much we can say, right? No. Okay, call the roll on that.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, so they're all set to go. Moving to the tavern operators licenses, would you read those names, please?
Michelle Whitney, Jennifer Gaffney, John Swisher, and Jonathan Hamilton.
Is there a motion to approve those tavern operators licenses?
Perhaps there should be some discussion about the individual tavern operator licensees.
I think we should separate one.
Well, that's only if we choose to, right?
What's that? Yeah. Yep.
I move that we separate the individual licenses so we can take them one at a time.
Okay. Well, would you like to read one name for us?
Is there a
please?
second on that motion?
Oh,
Second.
we have to do
That's a
it
good
that way?
idea.
Yep. No, I don't think there'd be a motion to actually do them individually.
Vicky just moved that they separate them out. Then isn't that the motion on the table?
Are you recommending that they separate them out?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I know they're motion actually do, we can just do a second.
Yeah. I should put a motion on the table.
I'll second it.
Okay. Um, I don't think there's any discussion on the motion. So call the roll on the motion to separate.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
No.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-1.
Okay, then we will go one at a time. And if you would give us our name, we'll go from there.
Michelle Whitney?
Is there a motion to approve the license for Michelle Whitney?
I'll move to approve the license for Michelle Whitney.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0. Next name is Jennifer Gaffney.
Okay, is there a motion for Jennifer Gaffney?
I'll make that motion to approve the license for Jennifer Gaffney.
Is
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Mr. Fields.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0. John Swisher?
Is there a motion for John Swisher?
I'll move for approval for John Switzer.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0. Next applicant, Jonathan Hamilton.
Okay. Is there a motion for Jonathan Hamilton? Is there a motion for Jonathan Hamilton?
I move we table the application for Jonathan Hamilton pending additional information from the applicant.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to table and a second. Would you call the roll?
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, and that's all we need, right, this time? Okay. That takes us to item 8B, WPPI Energy Annual Update Presentation. And is it Jake Olkey?
Polkey is correct, yes.
Okay, Vice President of Energy Services, and I will pass the discussion to you. And why don't you, for the public, tell who you are and so forth?
All right, very well. Well, I appreciate you giving me some time this evening. Again, my name is Jake Olkey with WPPI Energy. And I want to thank Paul and Steve for getting us some time on the agenda tonight. If you are not aware, WPPI Energy is the wholesale energy provider for the City of Lake Mills and 50 other community-owned electric utilities. And so I asked to speak with you today just because WPPI Energy is owned and governed by the City of Lake Mills and our other members. And so we feel it's our responsibility to keep you informed on a regular basis of the activities that we're working on and on behalf of your community and the others. So I had some handouts here for everybody, and I believe the same thing will be up on the screen. I'll try to signal when we're making a turn here, and we'll move on to slide 2 right now. So to start off, I just want to give you an overview here. Today I plan to discuss the process by which we receive direction from our members on the business objectives and priorities that we are working on your behalf. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the specific priorities that are in our business plan that may be relevant to you as you're thinking about your utility's future needs. And this includes a few items that we are sort of referring to under the term utilities of the future, specifically in the area of technology and keeping rates updated and competitive. And then I'll cover a few other system-wide priorities that I think that you'll be interested in and should be aware of, and then we'll wrap up with just a couple of key takeaways. So we'll move on to slide 3. So I mentioned our business plan in the intro here. WPPI Energy just recently finalized a 5-year business plan that directs our work on a number of priorities that are agreed upon by our membership. So throughout 2016, we had a series of 11 different regional meetings where we brought members in to solicit feedback and discuss what local priorities were for our communities and what needs to get into our overall joint action business plan. So historically, our success has been driven by the fact that our members are very active in our organization and provide feedback and drive what we do. And we were pleased that with this plan, we did have feedback from all 51 utilities actively participating in the business plan process. Slide 4. So within the business planning process, one of the key priorities that was identified is the need to ensure that our members are prepared to serve their customers well as they become utilities of the future. And there's a number of assumptions driving this priority. The first one being evolving customer expectations. And I like to describe this one with an example. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Amazon.com and probably have shopped there before. I use it quite frequently. I had a refrigerator that needed a water filter recently. Was able to go right on to Amazon and look up the part. I didn't even have to look up the part number because it was already in Amazon from a previous order. And with one click, the water filter's on its way to my house. And what was nice was that all that information was already archived in that database. And not only was that order in there, but I found that every order that I'd placed since 1998 was available to me. Which then sent my wife on a rapid review of my orders over the last decade. But I'm not trying to suggest that Amazon.com is going to be the next electric utility, but what it is doing is it's driving the average person's expectations around availability of information. And so with electric utilities, we're almost just barely past the time when we were sending out postcard bills. And so customers are going to be expecting that they're going to be able to look into a system, see the archive of their bills and their data that you're collecting, and make decisions with that. And that's what we're trying to get at with this evolving customer expectations. On the topic of technology.
Can I ask
Sure,
a
go ahead.
question? I assume what you're driving at is that eventually it'll become more computer-driven, is that right?
That's exactly right.
So with that in mind, when do you think that will come to fruition?
Great question, and I will speak to that in a little bit here on some of the things that WPPI is doing to help our members prepare for that. But we have a couple of initiatives in place right now where we're preparing to launch some systems that would allow you to engage customers online. They would have the ability to pay their bill, view their bill, look at past usage, participate in programs, things like that. So that's basically 2018.
Can I follow that up?
Sure.
With the news that's constantly with computer-driven technology that we have with hacking, and I'm going to assume that you are also looking at that security angle for online information
Yeah,
and so on.
very much so. We have a number of initiatives that we're undertaking to make sure that cybersecurity would be the term we refer to, but with all of the customer information that's floating around and the amount of access points that there are, that's definitely a critical piece of the puzzle. So I guess kind of transition from that comment, the technology part does fit into that. And so within technology, there's advanced metering, which I understand the city is getting ready to install some advanced metering on the electric and water side of the utilities. There's what we call meter data management systems, customer information and billing systems, which gets a little bit towards what you're asking, and then the online engagement tools, which is the customer interface part of that. And so all of these things are initiatives that utilities are undertaking now to keep their operations efficient and up to date and to meet those customer expectations that I talked about before. And then lastly, on the competitive and innovative rates, in all of the customer feedback work that we've done, we look to find out what customers are most interested in from their utility, or what is the most important factors in an electric utility, and how well the utility is perceived for keeping rates low is always at the top of the list. And part of what drives that perception is keeping your rates updated, making sure costs are allocated properly, and that would be another one of these assumptions playing into these initiatives. So I guess the main point of these, as you might imagine, this is a lot for small communities to take on by themselves. And so through the joint action model in WPPI Energy, we have access to shared systems and professional expertise and staff training and those types of things to support those needs as you move into the future. Slide number 5. So maybe taking a step deeper into the technology and customer engagement and the question that Mr. Fritsch asked, we see the customer information system, or what you might commonly think of as the billing system, at the center of these technology advancements. And so we've been working on a number of services and trying to increase our capabilities and provide additional training for our members on this area so that utilities are able to continue to meet the customer expectations there. I mentioned advanced metering and the meter data management system. The membership has a shared investment in a meter data management system. This was about a $2 million investment that was made a couple of years ago. And this is the system that stores the customer data, helps manage as you're collecting data on a 15-minute basis. That ends up being a large amount of data. And so this system helps sort through the complexities, verifying that data, and then helping use that for the billing process. Online customer engagement offers that interface for customers, so all of that information that you're collecting, rightfully so, should be available to customers, so there'll be an online portal for them to go on and view that data, and then pay bills, view bills, set up different payment options and things like that. As I mentioned, we are currently preparing to launch a system that would be available for our members. We have a pilot that's going, and we expect to wrap that up by the end of 2017 and then make that available to other members in 2018. And then preparing to meet outage management needs is sort of a new thing when it comes to technology. Our members have excelled at reliability and managing outages, primarily because you serve city limits and your crew is located very close to where the needs would be. But again, on the customer expectations side, we're in a day and age when a lot of people don't even call in to report that they've had an outage. They just assume the utility knows. And a lot of cases they don't know. And so on the technology side, we're looking at systems that can help the utility collect that data and then communicate back out. What are the expectations? Your power is out. Is there an expectation that the utility knows, and how long it might be before that power is restored? We have a task force of member representatives that are evaluating those needs at this point, and we look to have some type of a recommendation for that coming in 2018.
Can I ask another question
Sure.
on this point? What about, have you guys done anything in regard to regional I hate to use the term catastrophes, but outages where, for example, we've got sunspot activity and we get overloaded with ionized particles coming from the sun, and I think we had it in Quebec a number of years ago, dealing with that, or cascading effects of power failures across the region. Have you guys prepared for disasters like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So WPPI Energy and its members are part of a large footprint of what's called an independent system operator. And so we participate with all of the utilities in this footprint that stretch probably from Manitoba down through the entire Midwest, touching down to Texas, and then kind of over towards Ohio. And what that means is that system operator dispatches all of the resources and all the transmission within that footprint to be most efficient and creates this market. So also within that footprint, then we plan for what we call emergency response. So they're monitoring, are there significant power plant outages or transmission constraints that could lead to disturbances on the system. And then they can dispatch from there what utilities need to respond. WPPI Energy has a number of large power customers that have their own backup generation, and we also have a portfolio of customers that have what we call interruptible load or load shed capabilities. And so that is one of the steps that we take before you would probably know that there's outage impending or something. And so the system calls on us, as well as all of the other utilities, to try to drop that load down and maintain reliability across the system. So that's probably at the high level perspective. There can be community-based emergencies, maybe like a tornado or something like that. And there are plans within, particularly with the municipal utilities, they have what's called mutual aid plans. So if something happened in Lake Mills, Waterloo or Jefferson may send crews over to help restore power quickly. Similar to what you saw with the hurricanes, there were crews from Wisconsin that went down to help with that.
So what about, going down further, because I look at your role and responsibility in this and what I'm seeing in the technology and customer engagement initiatives are to help the local utilities. Do you, as a organization, also put any effort into getting all the way down to the actual end user of the system? And what I'm getting at here in a roundabout way, there's devices out there in the market now that I have installed, or other people have installed, that it can actually tell you how much at any given time, say your refrigerator's using, your dishwasher, all this stuff, so we can make more informed decisions about when we use power and when we don't use power in our house. Is WPPI doing anything in that venue?
Yeah, we're constantly looking at what those technologies are out there. The customer engagement platform that we're looking at would be, as you mentioned, kind of a higher level. So it will give, let's use Lake Mills as an example. Once you have your advanced metering infrastructure in place, you will be collecting interval data from the electric meter and the water meter. So in this particular platform, a customer can go on and see that profile. It gives them an idea of what times of the day they're using more energy. It helps track back. On the water side is helpful because you can see there's no reason why I should have been using water at 1 a.m. Generally leads to leaking toilets or something like that. So there's a lot of tools that may be built within this customer engagement platform that will start to help with that. To your question, we are looking at different ways to utilize some of the technologies that are out there. Maybe smart thermostats are a way to communicate with customers. There's some pilots that we're looking at right now to partner with a company like Nest or Ecobee that makes these devices. They obviously know where they all are already, and so they have a connection there, and they can implement messaging and different types of data collection or demand control, like maybe you can send signals to tell a person to set their temperature back, or it could automatically do that if the customer opted in. So those are some things that we're looking at. WPPI has a system of advisory groups in place, so when we have ideas like that, we bring them to a group of members that helps think through how might that work for their community, how would this apply to other communities, and then we sort of flesh out how that initiative might work. Coincidentally, Paul is on our Member Services Advisory Group that would deal with initiatives like that. So Paul will be looking at a few things coming up here soon. So.
Thank you.
Can I just make one quick comment too? All the computer stuff and the technology stuff is great, but we also have, because of WPPI, we've got a gentleman that comes to our utility once a week and serves as our energy service representative, and he does the human aspect of what you're talking about, where he works with customers, large and small, helps them with energy conservation questions, solar things, stuff like that. So in addition to all the technology, we're also making sure we've got a human being that's involved with those very things too.
Yeah, great point.
Thanks.
Okay, on the topic of rates, I just wanted to hit on a couple points here because it's important as we move forward to make sure that the rates are designed properly to meet customer expectations and to make sure that the utility runs efficiently. So what I'm referring to here would be instances where the rates allow you to basically collect the revenue to run the utility, but there's different allocations that can be done. So we want to make sure that the cost allocations are proper across different groups of customers or different classes of customers. There's different ways to reflect the varying cost of energy throughout the day or throughout the season. And rates can send price signals to people, so when the price of electricity is higher, you get people to respond. Or when it's lower, maybe they can shift some of their use to those time periods. So that's part of it. And then sort of behind the scenes, making sure that you have your fixed costs and variable costs allocated properly. And this gets a little bit into the weeds with the rate design, but to give you an example would be, we're seeing more homeowners wanting to put solar panels on their roof or on their property. And so if you don't have the rates designed correctly, the customer is probably going to produce most of its own electricity, which means that you're not collecting revenue on the energy consumption part. If you have a lot of your fixed costs, like maybe the cost of recovering the distribution system built into that energy charge, and they're no longer using that, but they're still connected to the system, it kind of creates a disparity there. And so we just want to make sure that the way that the rate's designed gives the customer the ability to take control of their energy independence, but that if they're connected to the utility, they're still paying for the transformer and the service feed that the utility's provided there. On the wholesale side, some of the things that we've recently undertaken then to help with some of these things, we initiated basically what I call an economic development rate. We call it new load market pricing, which is sort of a complex term around our market. But it's an opportunity for communities to attract new large businesses or help existing businesses grow. And this would be for significant loads. But what ends up happening is WPPI plans for a certain amount of growth. And if you have a large industrial customer siting in your community, or maybe an existing customer that wants to grow, that would be something that's not really in our existing resource base. And so what we would do is look short-term to the market, which we would consider our incremental cost to serve that customer, to help you serve that customer. So in these cases, what we can do is give a short-term period where we just pass along those market costs, which currently are attractive and lower than the embedded costs of resources that are out there. So it can really help a large business kicking off as they're incurring a lot of costs in their startup or startup of an expansion. And there's really no, there's no cross subsidies built into that, so it's a nice setup for communities to be able to offer something like that. We also did a little modification to our wholesale rate this last year, which takes into account some of the seasonal factors. So in the summertime, WPPI as a system, all of our utilities together, has its maximum demand in the summer, which is driven by air conditioning and other cooling loads. And so in the market that we participate in, our summertime peak is maybe 200 megawatts higher than our winter peak. But you have to buy that capacity for all 12 months of the year, even though it's only being used and set in the summer. So what we've done is taken the costs of that incremental capacity that's used in the summer and shifted that to the summertime so that our members can send price signals. So if you have people that are causing that peak, that they also are the cost is reflected back in what they're paying. So that will come through currently on the wholesale rate, and you may have seen if you were looking at some of the utility bills that over the summer they seemed higher than they have been in the past. But if you look closely then in those winter months, they were lower than they have been in the past. And in the end of the year, it should come out to be the same cost on an annual basis. It's just allowing you to shift costs to certain periods where you can send price signals.
When did that change take place?
That went into effect on January of 2017.
Okay, so this would have been the first summer that
That's
would have been,
correct.
and the first real winter, full winter
Yep, that's right.
ahead of us, okay.
So, in other words, if I understand the model that you work under, you basically are buying power on the grid, and I believe also we're generating it too, right?
That's right.
And so you are going out buying, like in an auction, the lowest, hopefully lowest priced
Exactly.
power, and then you're also, when you need it, I know we've got one up at Fond du Lac,
That's right.
peak power plant up there. And I was looking ahead here, we've got some, which you'll get to, I guess, future solar and various other power generations. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, so I kind of what you're getting at, we have all of these resources in place, but some of them are in place and only used part-time, part of the year to address that summertime peak. And so it costs a lot to add those resources. We just want to try to allocate those costs in the buckets where they're actually used. So people that may use more energy in the summer and are driving that peak, should be paying for that resource as opposed to loads in the winter that aren't really causing that extra capacity to be needed.
How far out do we purchase? Do we purchase power from the western states or Canada or whatever
Oh, regionally, you mean?
for us, for our use?
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to explain that, but we have power plants and purchases mainly in the Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota region is where we have our transactions take place. But as I mentioned, we participate in this market, which gives us access to the pool through that entire Midwest region. So physically, it's a bit limited by the wires that can get it here, but
But that gets-
Actually, I think you guys buy and sell on a daily basis, don't you?
Yep.
So hourly. So
hourly, yes.
they're moving their excess or their needs on an hourly basis so that they can get the best market.
Yeah, that's a great point. So if we have excess, we can monitor that and sell it into the market. When we need it, we can buy back. So.
Then my next question is, I know you don't own the transmission lines. What, do we have any, I've heard that sometimes the infrastructure could be updated quite a bit. Is that still the case?
There's been a lot of progress made over the last decade. So back around 1999, 2000 is when the American Transmission Company was formed. And that was some legislation that required the Wisconsin utilities to divest their transmission assets into a single entity that was separate from the utility. Part of that was because as a transmission owner, you kind of controlled your area, so you didn't want to have more transmission to be used by other utilities. Now it's an independent organization that's only in the business to build and operate transmission lines. So we've seen significant improvement in the reliability and transport capability since then. That entity is still owned by the utilities, but as shareholders or board members. When that company was formed, WPPI was actually able to become an owner of American Transmission Company, and so we have a seat on the board, and we, as they invest in those projects, we get a return back, which helps us hedge our transmission costs and keep our expenses lower. Okay, on slide 7, there's a couple of points on here around our power supply plan. Obviously, this is the main thing that goes on at WPPI is our power supply portfolio. And we have what we call open space in our portfolio looking out in 2019. What that means is we have planned out our resources, and as the loads change over time, it appears, and our resources change, we have the ability to either add resources or look more into the market starting in 2019. The most likely new power supply resources that we're exploring are renewable energy, energy efficiency, demand response, and natural gas. You may have seen last year we issued a request for proposals for additional renewable energy resources, which resulted in a couple of announcements that we've recently made. One being the Point Beach Solar Energy Center will be purchasing 100 megawatts of solar starting in 2021. And then more recently, we announced a 132 megawatt wind farm that will start purchasing energy from in Illinois in the summer of 2018. And that contract goes through mid-2040. So both of these were excellent options for us. They add carbon-free, emission-free resources to our portfolio. And in addition to that, we're at a point where some of these resources are highly cost competitive. These two in particular are being added at a point where they're actually lowering our revenue requirement.
Can I ask where, I've been to the Point Beach Nuclear Power Plant. What this means, solar energy, what do they have? Solar collectors or what?
Yeah, so if you think of that particular plant with nuclear regulation, you have a lot of land to buffer the nuclear plant. They actually own 1,000 acres around that.
Yes, they do.
That power plant, so that you can't really do anything with. So a very unique situation where there's a lot of land with no value. So they'll be constructing about 700 acres of solar panels there.
Good use of that land.
It is, yes. Yeah, we were very fortunate to come across that project. So I mentioned these are emission-free. This will bump our portfolio to 40% emission-free when those two resources are online, and then 22% of it will be coming from renewables.
Where's Bishop Hill Wind Energy?
Bishop Hill is in Illinois, maybe just southeast of the Quad Cities, Davenport, Iowa, Moline. Okay, slide 8. One of our other priorities is around financial strength and wholesale rate. Obviously, maintaining our financial strength remains very important for us and for our members. WPPI has enjoyed excellent credit ratings historically and currently, and that's built in large part by the strength of our members' all requirement contracts with WPPI Energy. We currently have 49 of our members representing 98% of our load with their long-term agreements through 2055. And we appreciate the City of Lake Mills and your willingness to extend those contracts recently. What that does is it gives us a lot of flexibility when we come across resources to be able to finance those and stand up with our bond debts. We recently issued WPPI Energy Series 2016A bonds, and that was done in order to refund in advance a portion of our 2008 A bonds. You'll see on the slide here that particular project allows us to bring about $10 million worth of net present value savings to our members and our rates. And then finally, as expected, providing you low-cost wholesale electricity is central to our mission. Our average wholesale costs to our members have held steady over the past 5 years, with 2016 coming in 2.2% lower than 2015. It's been a long time since we've seen wholesale power costs in a decrease. In fact, our 2016 costs are still lower than they were in 2012, which is a great sign. For the next couple of years, we would anticipate our annual wholesale cost increase to members to be what we call moderate, which means basically just at or about inflation. Okay, on slide 9 then, finally, WPPI Energy, as I mentioned, is member-owned and member-driven. So participation and engagement from our members is what ensures that we remain on track to serve the city of Lake Mills and our other members well. We remain focused on seeking the member participation, as I mentioned before, to shape our priorities. And so we often offer opportunities for governing bodies and member utility staff to get involved and stay engaged in WPPI. I mentioned before, Paul Hermanson serves on our advisory board for some of our member services. He's also on the board of directors at WPPI. We offer a monthly webinar series on a number of industry topics, and those are open to anybody that wants to learn more about what's going on at WPPI and those issues. We twice a year host what we call a member orientation. In fact, we had one today at our offices where we bring in new city officials, new member staff for a half day to learn about what WPPI does, some of what these priorities that we talked about, and what services and support are available. So we'd always welcome anybody here if you have an interest in doing that. The next one will be probably late spring. And then we started giving these presentations a few months ago, but our annual meeting is always another opportunity to connect with our other members and learn some high-level things about the industry and WPPI. That ends up being about the second week of September every year. So slide 10 is my last slide here. Closing, hopefully you can see from some of the things I talked about today that WPPI was created by and for the benefit of our members, including your local utility. So the business plan that I talked about today, that's our day-to-day work plan, and that's driven by the needs that we heard from the city of Lake Mills and our other members. So I guess knowing that you're moving ahead with advanced metering, and we talked about some of these customer engagement tools, as you start to look to bring some of those to the city of Lake Mills, just know that we're there to assist and support wherever is needed on those fronts. So good questions along the way. I'd be glad to try to answer any other questions if you have any. Otherwise, I can let you get back to your business.
Yes. What do you see as the greatest challenge for the future for WPPI and us, the electrical utilities that make you up?
Well, that's a tough one. I talked about a number of these today that are driving our business plan. I just see that there's a lot of potential change coming in the way we do business. So electric utilities have been around for 100 years or more, and we're proud of that. Electricity hasn't changed at all, but the utilities have, for the most part, been able to operate the same way for a long time. And now there's a lot of things happening with technology that are probably going to change the way we interact with customers, maybe the way that we operate our utilities. A couple of examples being electric vehicles, for instance. We've always talked about that as something that was going to happen in the future, but it appears that the future is happening now. We have a lot of auto manufacturers that are announcing dozens of electric models, which tells you what direction their businesses are going. So, utilities can sort of sit and wait and see how that's going to impact them, or we can participate in that game and know that these are neat technologies that people are going to be interested in, and it's going to change the way you serve those customers. It's going to change the load profiles. I think solar is going to continue to be of interest to people, and it's going to change the way that they expect their electricity. They might start serving themselves things like battery storage, a lot of things that are within the horizon here, 5 or 10 years, that could significantly change the way we do business.
Do you see the present federal administration as putting great emphasis on coal? Do you see this as impacting us at all?
That's a good question, and we keep seeing, I guess, the political statements about that. I think in the utility business, there's been some forward motion on emission regulation for a long time, and I think if you look around WPPI, for instance, we've been adding renewables, and with our coal plants, we've been making sure we have state-of-the-art emission controls, just looking to the future to make sure that our resources are as carbon-free as we can. And I think if you look around the nation, most of the utilities are already doing this, whether there's going to be regulation or not. And part of that gets to the customer expectation part that I talked about. The administration may be able to extend some of the plants, which can be good for jobs in the economy in certain parts. And obviously, we have substantial investment in coal right now. So to the extent that the regulation allows us to sort of move forward at a pace that makes sense for us without harming customers with increased costs, I think that's probably the path that most utilities are looking forward to at this point.
How much of our generation is coal sourced?
I think we're probably in the 40% range right now.
So 60% is renewable, solar and stuff like that?
Yeah, and the nuclear that I mentioned, we have some natural gas, and then our market purchases end up being a mix of whatever's on the system.
And the nuclear tends to come from Point Beach?
That is our arrangement right now, yes.
Yeah.
Does WPPI work with our customers here in Lake Mills with focus on energy money at all, or come in and do power studies or help get grants towards that?
Yeah, great question. So Paul mentioned before, Corey Neely, our energy services representative that works in Lake Mills, that's one of his priorities, is to engage with the Focus on Energy program so that we understand what programs they're offering and how we can better bring those to the city of Lake Mills. Corey works with the city of Stoughton, Evansville, and Broadhead also. And so that helps sort of with some sharing of ideas. The city of Stoughton can undertake a program and then share successes or failures, what we might avoid. But so Corey's, some of his tasks are to work one-on-one with the large businesses in the school district in the city here to make sure that we're bringing those programs in. And our objective is always, with that program, to get as much return back to the community as we can. So, I don't know, Paul, maybe do you have any other comments on how well the city's been able to do that in the past? Or I don't have the specifics here, but
Yeah, we've been real fortunate to have really good active ESRs, and I know that we've got a couple of projects in the queue. We've done some projects with the grocery stores, some of our larger customers, already. Focus on Energy is kind of a state-run program, so we simply tap into the dollars, but our ESRs are able to help folks do that. The other things that they do are, some of our public relations, that sort of thing, and very valuable resource, stuff that we couldn't do on our own. And it allows us to provide information, programs, products that, the big guys are able to do, but we can still do it here in little old Lake Mills. So a very active, very good program. And the only thing I'd say then is if you know companies or individuals that have questions or things they want to do, give a call, and we've got a guy that'll follow it up.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
guess as Paul was talking, I just realized I had made an error in my ESR statement. Corey Neely was our person that we had in Lake Mills, and we've been making a transition over 2017. Greg Hoffman, who has supported Lake Mills in the past, works with Jefferson and Economowoc, is now the energy services representative here, and we just kind of did some regional allocations there. As I mentioned, Stoughton, Evansville, and Broadhead fit better, and he now works with Waterloo instead of Lake Mills. So Greg Hoffman is our man, and he's one of our senior ESRs, and actually was on our staff back when Paul was actually an ESR at our office.
Yes, that's right. I was an ESR at WPPI, and now I'm working my way down to management.
Quality, not quantity.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to take this opportunity to recognize the fact that Lake Mills has always historically been very watchful in the area of electricity. Earlier councils, probably 100 years ago almost at this point, were responsible for the electric utility that we, have citywide, and also further later councils kept going and made sure that we took good care of our electric utility to the point where we are today, where we're in good shape. And it's nice to have staff here in the city when we have problems. They're right there, and we don't have to wait for a 30-minute response time. And yet we have people like you who support us on the outside, because you can't do everything from the inside. But I did want to recognize the historical piece. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, we will move to item 8C, Resolution 1738, recognition and appreciation of service for Mary Jensen.
Resolution 17-38, an appreciation of public service to the City of Lake Mills from bookkeeper Mary Jensen. Would you like me to read this full?
Read it, please.
Sure. Whereas Mary Jensen has served many distinguished years with the City of Lake Mills administration, serving the City Council and departments of the city with a desire to provide the highest level of service to the community. And whereas Mary Jensen has devoted 40 years of providing feedback to all operations of the city, while exhibiting the highest level of commitment to the city and showing determination in accomplishing her duties. Whereas Mary Jensen's resolute attention to financial detail, constant vigilance, unique ability to understand and respond to the needs of the people she worked with, contributed to the constant improvement of Lake Mills. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of City of Lake Mills does hereby recognize the dedicated public service and career accomplishments of Mary Jensen and extends best wishes for an enjoyable and healthy retirement.
Okay, and Mary Jensen has been a staple for a long time in Lake Mills, and we're going to miss seeing her face in the office when we come in to talk to her or whatever we needed to do. And we are hoping her the best in her retirement and really appreciate the 40 years she gave to the city. Do you have a plaque or anything at this moment? No, okay.
I do have a plaque, it's in my office though. 'Cause
Okay, so she will be receiving a plaque from the
Yes.
city to recognize her longtime work, and we really appreciate everything she's done. So, does anybody else want to make any comments before I move on?
I just wish to extend from the council our thanks for all her efforts over all the years.
Moving on then to item,
You need to make a motion to...
That's a
oh, we have to
resolution.
move it. Oh, I
Yeah.
thought it was automatic because it was so good. All right,
I so move
I'll second
with
it.
much thanks.
yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't
We have
catch
a-
who the second was.
Mike.
Mike, thank you.
Mike, okay, we have a motion and a second, and now Is there any other discussion? I'm sorry, I put the discussion before the motion, too. Okay. Seeing none, call the roll.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Should be a resolution that's automatic, but we don't have those. Okay. Going on, 8D, Resolution 1739, donation of the obsolete and non-compliant equipment for the Lake Mills Fire Department.
Resolution 17-39, donation of obsolete and non-compliant fire department equipment.
Okay, we have the resolution in front of us on our computers. Does anybody want it read, or do you have questions? Otherwise, I need a motion. Let's try that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, now we can discuss it. Does anybody have questions or
I have a
comments?
question. If it's of no value to the City of Lake Mills Fire Department, why would it be of any value to anybody we donate it to?
Yeah, especially,
Well, that's because where we're donating it to, it's not, it doesn't meet US requirements, but we're donating it to a fire department in Mexico.
Okay.
And down there, it's pretty high value, even though it doesn't meet the federal requirements here.
Okay.
Yes, but is it safe?
Yeah, it's safe enough. I mean, it's safer than what they have, Doug.
And something is better than nothing,
Nothing, yeah.
which is what some of the communities down there probably have.
So this is an arrangement that's already been worked out? What is it?
It's a program that's in place for fire departments in the US.
What are we sending down there?
It's mainly like obsolete helmets, fire jackets,
Oh,
boots.
oh. Here, I thought it
Sometimes it's
was
face
hook and
masks.
ladder or something.
Oh, no, no, no. No.
so, let me ask this question. Maybe it's silly, maybe it's not. Are there protections in place in case someone gets hurt using that equipment, so as the City of Lake Mills, in particular the fire department, can't be sued for donating defective equipment?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
it's run through a national program, and they've set it all up, and, yeah.
So they sign off when they receive it that they aren't going to come back and sue us.
Yep.
Okay. Good question. Nothing wrong. Never a bad question. Okay? We might not always have the answer,
Yeah.
but good question. All right. Anybody else have a question or comment on this resolution before we vote? Okay, then I'll call the roll.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
By the way, this isn't the first time we've donated equipment. I think we did it once in like 2004.
Okay. Moving
I
on.
might not have been here that night.
Golly. Okay, moving on to item E. Resolution 1740, sale of public land in the business park to HMG Properties LLC.
Resolution number 17-40, authorizing the sale of city-owned real estate located in the Lake Mills Business Park.
Okay. And does anybody want it read? Otherwise, we can have the city manager give us some background for the public and probably for us, although I think we already have it. Do you want to say something about this resolution?
HMG Properties is a business in the industrial park that's expanding, and they needed some room for a setback, and so we're selling them some additional property to meet that requirement. It's mainly wetlands, so all we did was charge them the cost of getting the land surveyed and sold. And they have room on the property to expand, but then they're right up against the property line. So selling them this additional property gives them the setback that they need from the building to the property line, but the land wouldn't be buildable. So it's it meets the green space requirements, it meets the setbacks, it meets everything, but really it's wetlands in a ditch. So it had no value to us, it had no value to them,
What
other
kind
than a
of
setback.
What kind of wetlands? Marsh?
Yeah, down by the,
Wet
by that
ground
ditch.
or what?
Is it by
It's a wetlands. It meets the technical requirements of a wetland, so it would support the, under the right conditions, it would support the plant life that would grow in a wetlands. So,
Is this in a flood zone?
yeah, it is in a flood zone too. It's actually a ditch that drains that portion of the, and
Is
it
that
kind
the-
of jumps across the ditch, and it's not ditch 35, it's,
Oh,
it's a tributary to that, runs along behind a couple businesses there. Actually comes out to American Way between SSR and the Cools Corner campus. It's kind of, you have to understand the workings of the business park. That ditch can flow in any of 4 different directions. Because the ground is so flat, it's just the ditch network just kind of feeds itself and then pushes out to ditch 35 eventually and then drains down to Rock Creek.
Acts as a reservoir?
It provides a place for the water to run off the flat fields into an area where they then can find an easier route to the main drainage ditch, which is ditch 35.
Will there be any kind of a deed restriction that they not fill the ditch?
The deed restriction is that it's a wetlands and a floodplain, so yeah, we
Okay,
didn't put anything else on it, but it was noted that those conditions were there. And as it sets, because they've already built to the setback line, they couldn't build in there unless we sold them some more land.
okay.
Is there any wildlife habitat there?
Probably.
Historically, it's been farmed. The ditches aren't navigable, so there's not water in them enough times to float a canoe for, so it's pretty marginal. But I would say if you asked me if there were rabbits and squirrels and stuff and a lot of birds, yes, but I don't think this will impact that at all.
Because they're not going to change the conditions of the land. You
No.
just need the land so that they can use the land they currently have to more full use. Is
Yes.
that accurate?
Yes, that's an accurate statement. And you have to be careful because remember, we're in the industrial park, we're selling this land for industrial purposes. We are actually in the process of converting a lot of the wetlands out of wetlands through multiple processes. So it's not like we're in the business of saving wetlands in this area. Vicky's question is probably more relevant in that, yes, the ditch will be maintained.
And it's a very small piece. It's 1,397 square feet.
Right, so it's 13 feet, well, it's 15 feet by 93.17 feet. So it's a very small
15 by
area.
97. Sounds like a good bowling alley. Long and narrow.
Yeah, in fact, it might make one lane.
One lane, right
Yep.
there. There we go. Is there anything else that we need to discuss before we vote on this from anybody's point of view? Okay. Did you get answered what you needed? Yeah. You're okay too? Okay.
I move adoption of Resolution 1740.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
All right, we move to the second reading of the 2018 general fund budget, ordinance 1180A. You want to read the title?
Ordinance 1180A, 2018 General Government Budget and Tax Levy Ordinance.
Does anybody have anything that they want to ask or comment on regarding the budget? Otherwise, we'll move to next meeting, the third reading. Yes. Is there, okay, seeing none. Moving on to item G, ordinance 1181, 2018 capital budget, second reading. You get to read the title.
Ordinance 1181, 2018 Capital Budget.
Any comments or questions on that? This is also the second reading. Third reading will be at the next meeting, the first meeting in November. Okay, and that moves us to item H, ordinance 1182, temporary operator's license, first reading. Would you please read that?
Ordinance 1182, temporary operator license fee. The City Council of the City of Lake Mills, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, does ordain as follows. Section 1, Section 3-1-2-C, classes of licenses and fees of the Lake Mills Municipal Code is hereby amended by adding the following. Temporary operator's license, which may be issued by city clerk under Section 125.17 sub 4 Wisconsin statutes, $10 per license. Section 2, this ordinance was sponsored by Council Representative Vicki Schmidt. Section 3, all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent with or contravening the provisions of this ordinance are hereby repealed. Section 4, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage and publication as provided by law.
Okay, now Steve, do you want to address what this is? No.
No, Misty does.
Misty does.
This
Okay.
is establishing a fee for temporary operator's license so that they can be issued. This is something I'm looking at as being kind of timely, this ordinance. There is an event coming up in November which will include multiple vendors underneath a Class B temporary picnic license. Each vendor will be required to have a licensed operator, and so trying to obtain up to 20 licensed operators can be a problem. This would allow us to charge $10 to issue these temporary operators licenses so that they can be licensed. There's a little bit of difference. They don't have to complete the responsible beverage serving training course. An individual would only be allowed up to 2 of these licenses per year. $10 we felt was an appropriate fee to recoup the administrative costs. It's what we charge for provisional licenses, which we can add on to regular license applications.
Is there like a time limit or a duration?
It's only good for 1 to 14 days. So if the event lasts multiple days, it could cover them for multiple days based on whatever the application would be.
It can also only be, like a licensee can only be representing a nonprofit organization for a specific event.
Yes.
So they're very limited in actual use.
Could they serve hard liquor and beer, or?
Not under a Class B. It depends on the nature of the license.
For a temporary Class B picnic license, you can only get licensed for beer or wine. There is no hard liquor temporary license under that.
So no wild turkey or anything like
No.
that?
Would we like to suspend the rules to let Katie Otto of the Main Street speak to tell us why this is?
And this would be something that'd be going into our code so that we'd have it established for future events as well where we've had some problems. So just, would not be just specific to one event. It would be,
But that's why we have the time concern. too,
yes,
The time concern is that we do have an event coming up for Main Street.
In November.
yes.
And so we're also looking at suspending the rules and doing all 3 readings tonight?
Waiving the second reading and going to the third.
Okay. Someone want to make a?
Can I ask one question
Yeah.
first?
Mhm.
What have we done in the past? Have we ever run into this issue?
Nope, never had this issue before.
We haven't, and a lot of times because when there's an event, there's only one location. So under the operators if there was one licensed operator supervising individuals who weren't licensed, that qualifies. The event where this is kind of brought to light is, it would be a wine walk, which would have separate locations. So you would actually have to have individual licensed operators at each location, because obviously they wouldn't be within sight and sound. I can see other events that we've had, though, where this could have been useful as well. Sometimes it can be a challenge to be within sight and sound of everybody who is serving. So this would definitely be a benefit for other events, too. It's just never been really brought to light now with wine walks starting to come into the picture. Dan and I looked at some different communities and how they did it as well, and it's all in statute, and it's happening. It's just the first time that it's really been brought to light here.
That would be the other point that I'd make. Under the statutes that our ordinances have already adopted, you certainly, the statutes that are cited here specifically have been adopted by the city of Lake Mills in their municipal code, and therefore you really already have the authority to present a licensee or an applicant with this license. This merely sets an ordinance amount, a $10 fee for such a license, and also basically promises that we'll provide an application for potential licensees.
Okay.
What can they do, what can't they do, and is there any, well, why don't you address that part? What does this allow the operator to do and not do, I guess is my question.
This allows them to serve the beer, wine, no different. Basically, it's called operators, but it's a bartending license, I guess is what it's easier to understand. They're responsible, no different than a bartender would be that's permanently licensed in a licensed establishment.
Then what kind of responsibility do they have under this?
It would be the responsibility of making sure that the legal age for the different events, it's going to be under the rules of those events. As far as a wine walk, there's limits to how much can be served. It's not just 20 open sites for drinking as much as you'd like. There's limits to what can be served. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be restricted based on that type of event. I don't want to say that would be a restriction though every time, because it's based on the type of event. So
it's akin to an operator's license that is for a specific event that's sponsored by a nonprofit entity that applies to a specific individual for a very distinct duration. That's about as clear as it can be. You can this person is acting as a tavern operator, a tavern manager during the course of their license.
Will all these individual licenses be coming to us for approval then? Or is it just going to be issued directly by?
Issued directly by the clerk. They're not held under the same stricture as the akin 2-year variety of an operator's license.
Okay, so not doing the background checks and all the other stuff?
Correct, and there's also no responsible beverage service classification required.
it's very similar, just trying to understand it, close to a provisional license, which I can issue, which is good for 60 days. So if an applicant were to come in for the 2-year application and request a provisional license, I can issue that license same day without background check. They don't have to have this class complete. That one does require at least class enrollment, though. And it's good for 60 days while they're getting their class done and while it's going through background check and while it's going to council. And then once the council decides, it's up to 60 days. Once the council decides, then that's either they have the license or they don't, and then the provisional's done. So this is similar in that mindset of you don't have to have the background check or the class. And I did check with the Department of Administration to verify, just because I didn't find it whole clear about the having to take the class, and I got a very clear response back from them that it is not, that they do not have to take that class first for these temporary licenses.
What's the city liability?
None that I know of. We're not providing the intoxicating beverage or anything like that. There is no statutory requirement that a background check or other steps be taken with regard to any individual application. So I can't think of any.
So in this case, the people who get this temporary license would be responsible to ask for IDs of people that they're not sure are of age.
That's correct.
Yes.
And it would be the Main Street program that would be liable for that if it didn't.
Yeah, or when you're serving alcohol, the event itself has to have a license to have, the ability to serve alcohol. So that license has to be abided by, and then each specific location also has to have the ability under that license to provide that. So the potential for liability really would come from the actual situs or the sponsor of the event.
Does anybody have questions for Katie Otto since she is here, or do you feel that you are ready to?
No questions.
We don't need questions.
Unless she'd like to speak.
So I'll make a motion to suspend the rules to,
Would you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll
And
second.
Second, to suspend the rules for Katie Otto to speak. Okay, and
All in
we
favor,
need to vote?
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We all go aye.
Aye.
Thank you for taking the time to consider this. Wisconsin legislation passed the wine walk rule a couple of years ago, and it allows up to 20 locations to get a temporary license to serve wine. You can have 2 different kinds of wine, 1 ounce from each type of wine. So people are getting a maximum of 2 ounces at each location. So it is pretty well restricted, and we're making sure they have to register to get in. They'll be wearing a wristband. They have to show their driver's license or some sort of ID to make sure that they are of age. We are offering a different color wristband for people who want to be designated drivers, because then they can just walk around and shop, which we want to encourage them to do. But the businesses who are going to be the open houses will know that if it's a certain color wristband, they're not going to pour any wine, so,
That's a good idea.
yeah.
What's the date for the event?
November 17th. It's the Friday before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of communities in Wisconsin that have done this, so I had to do some research and, got some good tips there.
What time is it?
From 5:30 to 8:30.
8:30 on a Friday night.
Right.
17.
Right.
All over the city or just downtown? Or
Just downtown. Yeah, we want it walkable.
And when you go to, where will be the beginning site? Do you already?
Lewis Station Winery.
Well, that's logical.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the people there will get a map or something about
Yeah,
where
we're going to
to
have
go?
a map that shows, all the places that are open and the wines that are at each location. And they will get a wine glass and then the wristband once they show their ID.
Any other questions for Katie? Thank you
If
for
you want to go
coming.
with me on that night,
Yeah, to the soccer game?
yeah, we'll be at
Yeah.
a soccer tournament.
I'm sure they won't need me, so, yeah. All right, thanks for listening.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, now, do we have a motion?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. So, is there anybody else who wants discussion?
I guess
I'm,
Maybe I overspoke.
I
It was so
don't-
long ago,
No, I don't think we
We
do.
don't
there is
have a
no motion.
Okay. Is there someone who'd like to make a motion for, we not only, we want to suspend the rules to do 3 readings. We have to do that first, don't we? Because this is
I'd
the
like to
first
make a
reading.
motion to suspend the rules, waive the second reading, and go to the third.
I'll second it.
Good, thank you. We have a motion, and call the roll on that.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, now we are on the 3rd reading. Do we need to read the title again?
Ordinance 1182, temporary operator license fee.
Okay. Any discussion at this point? We need another motion, or is it, we do? We need a motion for the ordinance itself.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1182, temporary operator license fee.
Do I have a
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please. Thank you.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
There you go, and good luck with your wine walk.
Thank you.
And thank you to staff and council that helped to get this written. Ordinance 1183, petition for annexation of Jennifer Jeski's parcel, and I'm going to let you read the number. Okay.
Ordinance 1183, an ordinance annexing territory to the city of Lake Mills, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, parcel identification number 018-0713-1223-009. The City Council of the City of Lake Mills, Jefferson County, Wisconsin does ordain as follows. Section 1, territory annexed. In accordance with Section 66.0217 Wisconsin statutes, and attached and incorporated by reference petition for direct annexation filed with the city clerk on September 27, 2017, signed by the owners of the property proposed to be annexed, the following territory in the town of Lake Mills, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, is annexed to the city of Lake Mills, Jefferson County, Wisconsin. Section 2, effective annexation. From and after the date of this ordinance, the territory described in Section 1 shall be part of the city of Lake Mills, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, for any and all purposes provided by law, and all persons coming or residing within such territory shall be subject to all ordinances, rules, and regulations governing the city of Lake Mills. Section 3, ward designation. The territory described in Section 1 of this ordinance is hereby made a part of the first ward of the city of Lake Mills, subject to the ordinances, rules, and regulations of the city of Lake Mills governing wards. Section 4, severability. In any provision of this ordinance, if any provision of this ordinance is invalid or unconstitutional, such invalidity or unconstitutionality shall not affect the other provisions or applications of this ordinance that can be given effect without the invalid or unconstitutional provision of application. Section 5, effective date. This ordinance shall take effect upon passage and publication as provided by law.
Okay. Okay, there, finally got the map. Okay. So we do have the map. It's on Elm Street.
Yes.
And now this is, are we just going to do the first reading tonight, or are they also looking for it to be a little faster than that?
They would like it to be a little bit faster, but we haven't received the state report yet, so it wouldn't do us any good to
Okay,
waive
so
it
we'll
tonight.
wait for the next meeting,
we'll
and
go to
then
the
if
next
we have
meeting and pass it
everything,
as
we
soon
can
as
do
we
the
can.
second and third
Right.
reading at that meeting. Okay, questions from anybody on this one? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Did you all read my memo? Did it make sense to you? The area is that between Linden Street and Elm Street, and it's currently vacant lots, so they'll have to do a CSM. They're looking at doing a mixed-use commercial type building, so it'd be similar to what's across the street. That's where the vet clinic and the real estate, that type of development. So it'd be a good mix between what was, the commercial area and the residential. It should blend relatively well and be a good mix. It is kind of what we were anticipating would occur when we put in Elm Street. We knew that there were open lots there and that this would be a good site for possible additional development. It's not going to drive a lot of high-end use, but for this type of use, it's a great option, so.
So when we bring it in, if this all goes through and the annexation goes through, what will it be zoned as initially?
We're annexing it first, so
Right.
our code works this way. When you annex it you could go to the Plan Commission first and get a recommendation and then annex it and have the Plan Commission's recommendation come in with the annexation. This time, they're annexing it first, and so by code, it comes in as RD, which is rural development, which is the
Okay.
lowest
Okay.
code level we have, and then the Plan Commission will review it, make the recommendations, and it'll move on through.
Okay.
And it'll come through I think they've already talked about they know they have to submit a application for a zoning.
Yeah, and I've got that application, so after Plan Commission, I'll be going to City Council at the first meeting in December, and obviously they're trying to move this along, so we'll have it that meeting.
Okay.
So the planning commission will act on it at the end of the month, and then we will have their results at our next meeting. And
At the first meeting in December.
Not at the next meeting, the first meeting in December. What'll happen here is they want to get it annexed right away, and then the zoning will come forward, and instead of having them come as one ordinance, they'll come as two separate ordinances.
It can't actually go to Plan Commission until their meeting in November because it has to be noticed and there has to be enough time. So there wasn't enough time between the annexation and then the statutory time limit for DOA to respond. So they have it actually until October 23rd, and I talked to them today, and they're going to be reviewing it October 23rd. So because of the timeline of it all, we actually can't go to Plan Commission until November. So that's why it'll be the first meeting in December. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
But they still want us to move a little faster if we can when the state comes through.
Right.
Is that for purchasing the land kind of thing, or what's the purpose if planning commission isn't acting on it?
Right now, everyone's waiting on the state. They have the application, and we can't really change the designation of this property until the state gives us the go-ahead.
And once the state gives us the
Their
go-ahead,
review is going to occur on October 23rd. They have the application. So there's no urgency. It will be likely right after October 23rd. There's just a statutory time period that the state has to make, the Department of Administration actually, that they have to make a recommendation on the application request.
And if I can explain, so if the council were to waive the reading and pass the ordinance on November 7th, it doesn't actually become in effect until publication, so it'd be the 16th. There's the time that we have to do the public notice for the Plan Commission. So if we were to just do second reading at the second, and then on November 21st, bring the third reading, if it were to somehow fail, then we've got the public already noticed for the public hearing to the Plan Commission. So as everything is mapped out.
it would be nice to have it done so that we aren't doing something we don't have to do because of a no vote.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you don't have to go that route.
No.
Technically, they could have filed for the zoning first. Once they got the zoning, then they could have annexed.
They could have done it that
Then the
way.
annexation ordinance would have done both the zoning and the annexation.
But then, by the timeline from when it was submitted and reviewing all the dates and with holidays, it actually would have taken longer to do it that way. So that's why we're doing annexation first and then zoning.
It makes some sense now, I understand. I just didn't.
Historically, we've done the annexation first, just to make sure, because the council, if they decide to annex it, then it makes more sense to go through the processes, but
And I'm used to having the planning commission's approval before we act on something, which is why I was asking.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused. Why would we zone property over which we don't have jurisdiction? And we don't have jurisdiction until it's annexed.
It'd be
what they do is they make a recommendation that says when this property's annexed, it comes in under this zoning. So then in the zoning ordinance, or in the annexation ordinance, it's actually both. It's an annexation and a zoning. So, and I know you remember this, all annexations used to go to the Plan Commission as part of the zoning. And then they would make a recommendation on the zoning and the annexation. We kind of diverted that and let the council make a decision on the annexation before we sent the zoning to them. So that's kind of how we've done it. That's not the way it has to be done. You can actually get the zoning done first. It's not, the zoning doesn't.
But it would be contingent.
It's contingent on the
Okay.
annexation.
Makes sense.
Okay, so this is first reading? That's all we have to do, right?
I got a
Doug's
question
done.
here. How does this, explain to me how this affects the municipal boundary agreement?
How does the municipal boundary agreement apply?
Yeah, work.
If you want to build on this lot, you have to apply for a building permit with the town. The town would say that site has to have water and sewer. in order to get water, you have to annex to the city. And so you would have to annex to the city, request the zoning, and request the water. So the only way you could develop these lots is by annexing to the city, based on the way the municipal boundary agreement is written.
Now, does any reciprocity occur because of this? We're taking land away from the town?
The boundary agreement requires us to pay the difference between the municipal fees and the town fees. So whatever the town would have got on that property, we have to pay them until the end of the boundary agreement. So if we'd annexed the land in 2002, they'd have gotten 20 years of payments. If we annex it this year, they're going to get 6. So it's,
That brings up another question. If we renew the boundary agreement, that doesn't make anything that's annexed before that extend out for the new life of the boundary agreement.
That would
Or does
probably
it?
be something we'd be willing to negotiate on.
the state statutes have changed since then. And so it's likely we would change to the state statutory requirement, which is 5 years.
Okay.
And then once you've met that 5 years, it's done.
Yes.
Even if there's a new boundary agreement, it doesn't come back in again and go for another 5 years. Okay, that's good. All right. Any other questions? Good questions. Yeah, that was good question. They're all good questions. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, that can move to item 9, recommendations for future agendas. We do, let's see, I just want to mention on item number 9 that for the council, on the city manager evaluations, I'd like the evaluation forms from the council by November 1st. And so if you haven't put that on your calendar for things to do, please put it on for the next couple weeks and give it to me then. Is that all right? Okay. Anybody have anything else that they want to bring up to put on the next meeting? We have other items. Of course, we have the readings that are coming up and so forth. Any items that you know are going to be on that agenda, Steve, that we might not know is coming?
We have the joint powers agreement.
Clean Boats, Clean Waters grant.
What?
The Clean Boats.
It's a joint power.
Clean Boats, Clean Water grant that we've been doing with the town.
Budget public hearing.
Yeah, the budget public hearing and the final approval of the budget ordinances.
Yeah, okay, that's right, that's our big night, yeah, okay. Any news on finishing the dam thing?
Yeah.
Good news or bad news?
They're still working on the computer interactions with the actuator.
Okay, so it's not done yet?
No, it's not done yet. They've got it working the way they want it to, but it's not reading the sensors in the fashion that they want it to yet.
Oh, okay, that's, that computer, okay. Yeah, I wasn't with you there for a bit, okay. And what about Lake Park Place? How is that coming?
I'm hoping to pave it Friday.
Okay, that's good news. Okay.
Yeah,
And-
I don't like talking about it because every time I do
Yeah,
it
no,
rains.
yeah, every time we open our mouth, we put our foot in it.
It
Okay,
rains.
all right. So, nobody else has anything? Meeting is adjourned.